We're back, folks. It's August 24th, 1936. We're in Hollywood, California, or at least that's where we're going to be listening to recordings from. I'm Loren Schoenberg, coming to you from the Bronx. In San Francisco, California, we have Nick Rossi, and we have Hal Smith in Searcy, Arkansas. Band leaders, instrumentalists, historians, we three, we get along. And we love to look into the history of the music, first through the vantage point of the rhythm section, and then expanding out to all the other parts of the music. We've been going with Benny Goodman session by session, and this is a very important one because it's one of the only ones we're going to do that's not Benny Goodman and his band, even recording under a pseudonym. We'll get to that in just one moment. The last session that we heard, August 21st, 1936, was quite a day for the Goodman band because not only did the big band record with a guest sitting in on the saxophone, Vito Musso, but also Benny Goodman did a small group session inviting a new musician into the fold to sit in, not a member of the band yet, and that was Lionel Hampton. So it's quite a heady time for the Goodman band. And on August 24th, Teddy Wilson, who also was just becoming a full-time member of the band in that summer of 1936, he had a record date. And on it, he included these two interlopers, these two newbies, Lionel Hampton and Vito Musso, with some of the other sidemen in the Goodman band. Let's listen to the first track, and then we'll come back, talk about the music, talk about the musicians, and even a little bit more context on it. This first track is called You Came to My Rescue, and here it is. Sheer magic, just one of those magical moments. Teddy Wilson at the helm of his own record date with side people from the Goodman band, Chris Griffin On trumpet, this might be one of his best small group record dates of all time. Vito Musso on the tenor sax, new man around. Lionel Hampton sitting in, probably not dreaming in a million years that he'll become a full-time member of the Goodman Band. He was just lucky to latch onto a record date and make some wonderful music. But the big news, well, the wonderful vocal by Helen Ward, which we'll talk about. But the big news is that we have the big three, Alan Roos, Harry Goodman, and Gene Krupa, not with Jeff Stacey, not in the Benny Goodman Band, not with Roy Eldridge and Chu Berry, not with Israel Crosby or something like that, but with Teddy Wilson at the piano. And I think we hear interesting things. Actually, I would say hear interesting things. I couldn't even hear Gene Krupa, but we'll talk about that in a moment. A couple of comments. Fats Waller and Teddy Wilson were alike in the sense that when they did their record dates, they wrote what I would call educated chord changes. And that was taking the sheet music chords and the stock arrangement chords, whatever they were dealing with, and doing what I call educated changes, throwing in a diminished substitution here, what we call a suspension or a 2-5 chord there, and just educating them, making them better chord changes than you hear, for instance, on without generalizing, like on Henry Red Allen Vocalion dates or other small group dates where the chord changes don't tend to be quite as sophisticated there. And you could hear them there. There's a wonderful photo of Alan Roos at the Manhattan Room about a year later, looking over Teddy's shoulder while Teddy plays solo piano, two chord mavens. And they're just little wonderful moments there of harmonic motion that are so subtle. So that's a place to start the discussion, even before we get into it. Why don't we turn to Hal first, because I don't know whether you have the toughest assignment here, but could you hear Gene Krupa?
I could hear him, and I heard him playing brushes, and very subtle, laid-back, relaxed brushes, which was exactly the right thing to play on this in this combination for a beautiful song like that. And by his doing that, the whole effect of the rhythm section reminded me of what's to come with the Billie Holiday and Teddy Wilson combinations, and how wonderful those rhythm sections played. It's very different from Fats Waller and his rhythm, because his guys played a little harder than Harry Goodman and Alan Roos and Gene did on here. Then, of course, there's Teddy himself. I heard some similarities to Jess with the single note trumpet style piano, for lack of a better term. A little bit of Joe Sullivan too on the double time break before the vocal. It reminded me of Joe more than Earl Hines. But of course, it's all Teddy Wilson, and it's his beautiful mind and his chord changes and his light touch that's unlike anyone else. And towards the end, I was listening Benny really sent me with that high note that he played, and how great that sounded in the final ensemble. I was listening to where the vibes were going to fit into that, because it was going to make it a very crowded space with a full rhythm section and piano playing in the upper register and clarinet in the upper register and trumpet in kind of an upper register there. But it didn't get overcrowded. Everybody figured out what to do to not step on anybody's toes. So that was pretty amazing.
Yeah, along those lines, I think one of the most marvelous aspects of this particular side, and this session for that matter, is the fact that there are 3 chordal instruments playing on this date. And the potential for tripping over one another, for kind of crowding someone else out of the collective space, it just runs really high when you have a piano, vibraphone, and a guitar all playing. And these guys all have such big ears and are such wonderful musicians that it's never an issue. It's this kind of musical, I don't know. I mean, tapestry is kind of a overused word, but it just all these points that are just kind of crisscrossing the entire recording, and it was very inspiring as a guitar player, as a rhythm player, as a chordal instrument player, just to listen, right? Just to listen to what's going on and how to pick up on these ideas that are being exchanged. It's just really, really marvelous. The second thing that struck me most about this recording was the tempo, which was just kind of astounding. I mean, I was keeping time here as we were going along, and just, you know, the possibility of that tempo dragging is very, very real, and yet it didn't at all. It just was
1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Yeah, that's a hard damn tempo.
Yeah. And they, you know, we've heard a little bit of this from Roos and Harry Goodman the last couple of sessions, where, you know, they're a little more relaxed. There's a little bit more of a relaxed rhythm feel, and it's not anywhere more present than on this side, right? It's such a relaxed rhythm feel, and it doesn't drag at all. I mean, it's right there, and right there at a pretty low on the old metronome. So it just, from those two, if that record, you know, if that's all I ever said about that record, that would be more than enough. But, you know, we get a lot of really interesting, what I call accompanist guitar from Alan Roos. We get some arpeggiated chords. We get some single note lines that kind of mirror what Teddy's playing at times. You know, Teddy at times is kind of falling in the background and playing these little single note lines to tie together his chords. And Roos, we've heard Roos do it before, but he does it again here at times, almost answering Teddy Wilson, who is just beautiful to listen to on this date. So it's a lot of interesting things from Roos and Goodman. We'll hear a little bit more on one of these other sides, but I also thought what it was really interesting was how Harry Goodman and Alan Roos, when Teddy was in the spotlight, how they restricted their harmonic movement. You know, they kind of like pull into focus and really focus on the basic changes and let, you know, Teddy play those educated changes, as you call them, Loren. And I think part of it was perhaps they did not know Teddy's playing at this point in time. And it's just kind of a natural reaction to not overplay, to, you know, just let's focus on the song as we know it, or as it's written, and, you know, hear where Teddy Wilson's going to take us. And part of it also is just respect. It's a great effect of being so simple in your harmonic movement and letting that other chordal instrument dictate where the song's moving. So we'll hear more of that, but it was great to hear in this tune.
Actually, I heard something quite different. I'm under the impression that Teddy wrote out the changes for the rhythm section, and that they were playing his specific changes, and that's what Fats did, and that's what Teddy did. I'm pretty sure, because some of the diminished chords and the certain way of moving with the bass line, that I don't think that stuff happens by accident. So I think that Teddy sketched out. In fact, I think I can say with confidence that he sketched out rhythm section parts for all his record dates, and gave those educated parts to the guitar and the bass, so they're all moving at the same time. But again, I'm not sure, I wasn't there, but that's how I kind of hear it. You mentioned the inner parts. Yes, that when Lionel Hampton came in, Teddy went to doing exactly what he does when Benny would play, which is playing what we call tenor notes or thumb notes, and just playing, you know, whole notes or half notes to kind of guide the harmony, like, here's where I'm going, here's where I'm going, here's where I'm going, here's where I'm going. And someone like Benny, who at that point, you know, could hear around around the block. That's all these guys could. That's all Benny needed, was that signpost of where the harmony is going. And then he could, you know, it's like what Everett Barksdale said about Art Tatum, you know, you give him a brick, he'll build a house. You know, it was the same kind of thing, I think, with Teddy's thumb and Benny's clarinet. Boy, that would be a funny sentence to transcribe. But nonetheless, so there's all that stuff that's going on. Benny with his high note, I've listened to this record a lot, and I hear a certain kind of freedom for Benny, that it's not his band, it's not his record date. You talk about the more relaxed feeling, which we don't get so much on the Goodman big band records, which is pretty much what we've been hearing. In fact, we've been hearing that they're getting more and more tight in a certain kind of way, wonderfully tight. But they're not what you would call rhythmically relaxed. I'd call them and again, I remember, we're always talking about adjectives and all that kind of stuff. Well, then what's the opposite of relaxed? Am I saying that they're unrelaxed or something? Not necessarily, but they're driving in a certain kind of way here, probably because of Teddy's persona also. I mean, Teddy was, famously cool, unapproachable, kind of remote personality in a certain kind of way. In this context, being the only black member of a white band in 1936, he might have just been like that anyway. See, when I knew him in later years, he was like that. That's just who he was, a cool number. But the relaxed feeling, the cool feeling, I'm sure emanated from Teddy's vibe also. And the way that Benny plays the obligato behind Helen Ward, who's also at her very best. I mean, that's jazz singing. I don't know what the hell you want to call it, but that's wonderful singing, her phrasing, her rhythm. And again, we talked in other episodes about the fact that she was quite a musician herself, played the piano, and supposedly good piano, not sit down and play, something silly, but, she could really play. Her choices of notes, are dictated by a harmonic awareness and by just being a fine musician, and her rhythm. But the way that Benny plays behind her, I mean, I don't think we've heard anything quite like that. Maybe the Gene Krupa swing band session, with Roy and Chu, but even that was more driving. And when he hits that high note coming out of plus, his proximity to the microphone, he's not off mic, but he's away. It's like he's over there. And I just have this picture in my mind of him in the back there playing these beautiful high notes, over the ensemble, which kind of makes it tough. What's Chris Griffin going to do? Is Benny going to play the melody up there? What's he going to do? And everything just really kind of gels. I guess you can tell I don't like this record at all. But it just seems like one of those magic moments. Just everything really came together. And I'll just say again, I think Chris Griffin, this might be his best moments on record, at least in this era. Let's go to the second tune from the session. And by the way, Benny only plays on 2 tunes. Benny and Helen Ward split. We don't know why, but they did. They only recorded 2 tracks. Here's Love in Your Eyes. And now, interesting, these are tunes from the big broadcast of 1937. The big band version of Benny's is called Here's Love in Your Eyes, and this is Here's Love in Your Eye. You can win a bet at a bar sometime with that one. Here we go.
phenomenal guitar intro. You know, the art of the 4-bar guitar intro is something that's very particular to this period in jazz. You hear it a lot on small group sessions. It seems like nearly every guitar player from the period had a kind of set of stock and trade intros that they altered for the tunes, for the keys. You know, everyone from George Van Epps to Bernard Addison to Carmen Mastra and Al Casey. You know, they all had these really wonderful little intros that, from a guitar playing perspective, I love jumping in and learning them and picking them apart. And it's, you know, it's to look at it from a contemporary perspective, it's a great alternative to setting up a tune. You know, it's so often when we're playing tunes these days, you know, the piano player will take it or will start with some drums, but it's nice that if their guitar is present to allow the guitarist to tee things up. What we're hearing with Roos, though, is something I think that is really special in that, you know, we're getting something that's out of the tradition, but we're getting something that's very challenging rhythmically and very particular to the kind of Alan Roos way of thinking. You know, he would keep on becoming more and more sophisticated with these sorts of things. I think a year later or so, he has a similar-ish intro to Coquette on a Teddy Wilson session that kind of plays with time, if you will, much like this one does. It's hard to find the one in this intro. And I think Alan probably took some delight in that, constructing his introduction. Probably one of the more sophisticated introductions and one that everyone knows comes a decade later with Alan Roos, the introduction to I'm Beginning to See the Light by Harry James, which has an extended Alan Roos intro that actually uses some of the same elements that he uses here. So you can already hear him putting these pieces together. It almost sounds like an etude to some extent. And in fact, if any guitarist is out there and they've spent some time with the first George Van Epps method book, they'll recognize a couple of the chordal figures, which makes me think that it has some roots in the Van Epps method. But again, it's definitely a creation out of the mind of Alan Roos, and kind of stakes his claim to being part of the harmonic innovations that are happening during this entire session. And just to follow up on something you said on the last tune, Loren, I definitely hearing what you're saying. I mean, the rhythm, the bass player and Roos are playing changes, and they're playing, you know, the same changes that Teddy's playing. I still think when Teddy plays, something happens to the way they're approaching those changes, though. It becomes a little more succinct, a little more focused. And it's, you know, a technique we've heard on other sessions, but there's something about this particular date that I think they're sticking to the pages, if you will, a little bit more closer whenever Teddy steps forward. And the record's all the better for it, because it really brings Teddy into focus, or helps bring Teddy into focus.
Hal?
I think this side is kind of a textbook for how a rhythm section should play a small band swing performance. There's everybody listened to everyone else, backed off when they needed to back off, moved forward when they needed to move forward. And it was just like a finely tuned machine, the way they put that together. I noticed at the beginning they were in 2-beat and eventually shifted to 4, and it was so smooth. It took me a minute to realize, oh, they're in 4 now, because they sounded so relaxed and so swinging right from the start. I heard the string bass and the bass drum in 2 for most of the first part of the tune, with Gene playing the 4-beat unaccented 4/4 on the brushes. And a little later on, he played some accents in random odd places that reminded me of the way Cozy Cole plays on the some of the Billy and Teddy things that he was on. They shifted into 4 behind Vito Musso and Hampton on their chorus, and kept it going behind Benny and Teddy, but it was very light and very effective. And I noticed that Helen Ward must have really liked this song, because she entered almost a whole measure early. holding the phrase, saying "oh," before she actually landed on the phrase, the first phrase of the song. And what a bouncy and swingy vocal. That's one of the best I've heard by her so far. Just absolutely lovely.
Yeah, she was such a musician.
Yeah.
And it was nice hearing those brush slaps, that
Yes.
at the end of the vibe solo, it's almost like Gene got in some commentary, and then when Benny came in, that thing that we were talking about, where all of a sudden they he's kind of getting active behind Lionel, then Benny comes in and they go,
yeah, that's right.
you know what I mean? It's really just a beautiful moment. I'll just repeat something I said on the other track also. It just seems to be like one of those magical things where, you could write down what Vito plays and what Chris plays and what Teddy plays and all of them, and the rhythm section too, and you couldn't have arranged it better. It's just and it's so spontaneous, you can hear it, and especially after when we heard Vito Musso with those kind of Anton Webern like breaks coming into Love Me or Leave Me, really, far out stuff. That to hear him shine in clearly when the changes are more diatonic and it's not a tune maybe he doesn't know or a key he's not comfortable with, but when it's something that meat and potatoes changes like a tune like this, it's although with subtle little Teddy Wilson things, then you hear the Vito Musso that must have knocked them all out, because he's just flowing and melodic and interesting, and he clearly has something that sometimes you always don't hear in pressurized big band performances, which is the sound of surprise, Whitney Balliet's favorite phrase. Vito Musso sounds so spontaneous, right? It just sounds like, take the dice and whack, whatever the hell's going to happen, happens. And I love it. Yeah.
Some unusual reticence from Lionel Hampton at the very end of the song too, when the ensemble, when all the horns were playing a little bit on the busy side, the rhythm was loosening up a little bit. He was playing half notes. He wasn't playing along with them, trying to play melody or counter melody, just playing chords on the vibes. That's not something that Lionel Hampton's going to do very much of in the near future, but it sure was effective there.
Well, yeah, and again, just looking at it, from the perspective of looking forward. I mean, there's Lionel Hampton. He was Louis Armstrong's drummer. Paul Howard, in a lot of Hollywood films, in band scenes with less height. You can see him in many, many different early movies playing the drums. When they show the band like this, and. As I understand it, got over a drinking problem. He had some issues, and put all that behind him. Married this woman Gladys, who really kind of put everything in order for him. Started leading his own band, and had a big band with Eddie Barefield and with Don Byas and Herschel Evans. Had a great band. Right around this time, had that small group at the at the club where Benny found him, of which we found a picture in the African American Press of 1936, and it's not really quite like it's represented in the Benny Goodman story, where he's waiting on tables and all this kind of stuff. They're on a stage with uniforms and the whole thing, and Benny comes and sits in, and within a couple of days he's on a Victor record session. I mean, playing vibes in a small group with Teddy Wilson and Gene and Benny, and then he's invited to this session, probably just thinking, I mean, be so careful. Who the hell knows what he's thinking? I don't know what he was thinking. But as I project onto it, if it were me, I'd be thinking like, man, am I lucky to be here? This was wonderful. Thank you so much. And now I got to go back to leading my career here and seeing what I can do, having no idea he's going to be asked to join the band. And so on this record, yeah, he's probably just looking at the chart that Teddy wrote out with those beautiful changes on it and just going E7, A minor. He's charting, But anyway, well, now what happened after that tune was Benny Goodman and Helen Ward left the studio because Benny had to pick his suit up. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. I have no idea why they left, but they did leave. And so a vocalist came in named Red Harper, who research today discovered that was a pianist vocalist in Jimmy Greer's band, which was quite popular out on the West Coast, and he ain't bad. He's not bad at all. And they did 2 tunes, and even though Benny's not on them, we'll listen to them because we do get to hear Harry Goodman, Alan Roos, and Gene Krupa with Teddy Wilson. So we will listen to You Turned the Tables on Me. Ah, okay.
The lovely present you brought, why hadn't you brought me more? But now if you'd come, I'd welcome anything from the 5 and 10 cent store. You used to call me the top. Oh, you put me up on a throne, you let me fall with a drop. And now I'm out on my own. But after thinking it over and over, I got what was coming to me. Oh, just like the sting of a bee, you turned the tables on me.
Kind of second Hal's remark about sounding like Cozy Cole there, Gene Krupa, because he does a bunch of things that are, I wouldn't say they're uncharacteristic of Gene's, but they're characteristic of Cozy Cole's. And, Cozy, by this point, I mean, the Teddy Wilson record dates have been going on from the summer of 35, so they're going into their second year. And Cozy Cole had been on many of them. And so had Gene. I mean, actually, Gene would be on some coming up. But it's not at all unusual to think that he knew what Cozy was playing with Teddy and just threw a few little things in there of that kind of vocabulary. Interesting to hear what happens when Benny Goodman leaves.
That's the first thing I thought.
Yeah, that there's almost like a certain kind of there's something missing. The clarinet's missing, but not only is the clarinet missing, but maybe some of the musical gravity that Benny brings when he starts playing in the atmosphere also kind of goes. Now, that's a kind of glass half empty, glass half full kind of comment. Hearing that without knowing what came before it, we find nothing lacking at all. Chris Griffin, very much still in his Berrigan mode, which he'll kind of give up. And that's one reason why he doesn't really get credit even for some of the solos that he plays in the 37-38 band, because it almost sounds like he was doing like a minor version of Harry James or something like that. But here he's still very much in the Berrigan mold. What did you guys make of the rhythm section? I don't know. It seems like I heard less definition. orally, not musically speaking, but in terms of that was from a very clean 78, and yet I didn't get a lot of bass. I didn't get a lot of the bottom moving. Is that just me, or did you hear something similar?
I heard more drums.
Yeah.
Gene was hitting everything a lot harder, brushes and sticks, and I think that was taking up some of the sonic space of the bass and guitar, and even the piano a little bit. But it was just a much more forceful and intense feel in the rhythm section to me than the previous two. And I think part of that may be Benny not there, and part of it Helen Ward not there, and this vocalist who probably wasn't going to go on to stardom, and maybe they were just having a little more fun with it. I don't know. He reminds me of Pinky Tomlin a little bit.
Of course,
kind of a hillbilly singer type. Not bad at all, but certainly not Red McKenzie or somebody like that. Yeah. And once again, notice that the rhythm section started in 2 and then switched to 4, and that was a nice uplift when they did that. And I'll be interested to see who plays the vocal on the next tune, because now Teddy is given one introduction to the guitar and one to the vibes, and he's not hogging all the introductions for himself like a lot of piano players would leading the band.
Not to name any names. What I heard on this was kind of remarkable, considering what we were just talking about in the last two sides. I heard the whatever that opposite of relaxed you were asking about, Loren. I was saluting the last couple sides for being such a relaxed rhythm feel, particularly the first side, and I hear that kind of focused, crisp Roos sound that we've heard on a lot of big band sides, Benny big band sides. It's like how, like you said, a little more force in terms of the rhythm drive, but also just a little more snappy, a little more propulsive, if you will. I think the bass gets a little lost on this one, because I think I'm hearing Harry play a little bit higher up in the neck. I hear him really in lockstep with Alan Roos, and functioning as one kind of rhythm machine, if you will, which we've talked about on a couple sessions prior. And I think he might be playing a little bit higher up on the fingerboard. At times, especially when they go into 4, I'm really feeling like he's really in tight with Roos, and with the drums kind of playing a bit more, the overall effect is a little bit of a loss of the presence of the bass, at least as far as what we traditionally think of as those low end bass notes. But at the same time, I mean, like you said, if we hadn't known what had come before, as far as the songs recorded, this is absolutely wonderful sounding little swing session. Teddy Wilson sounds great. I thought it was interesting with Lionel's intro, same sort of concept that we'd heard with Roos before, taking some chances harmonically as well as rhythmically. I dare you to count that, very easily the first time without listening to it a couple times and going, oh, okay, yeah, that's what's going on. Here's where we come in. Although clearly the band nails it because they're fantastic musicians. But yeah, I'm curious to see who gets the next intro as well. I can't remember.
Yeah. I'll say one more thing on top of that, which is that Teddy is present in the rhythm section with this, which we really don't hear on the first 2 tracks. It's more, he's down here and you hear them all playing like this. And here you get this Teddy. And, there's that great quote from Joe Jones, which was where was it? It might have been in one of the Lester Young story double albums or something like that, where he said, when they recorded with Teddy in the 30s on some of the Teddy Wilson dates or some of the Billie Holiday dates, famously the bassy rhythm section, he said, like, we had to, I forget whether the word was bully or...
It's bully.
Yeah, we had to bully Teddy to get with us. And I always meant, to lighten up a little bit and not be quite like this. But he wasn't like that on the first 2 tracks either. So it's just Interesting. I mean, the balance changed, right? I mean, Gene was louder, and maybe when Gene gets loud, then Teddy does this, and you know what I mean, and the guitar and the bass kind of suffer a little bit. Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? But it was definitely a different balance, I think. Referring to the record session that Nick, that you referred to before, that we had touched on, the 1937 Teddy Wilson date, which is almost a copy of this one. It's summer of the 37. They're in Hollywood making a movie. They have a trumpet comes in and a tenor and all that stuff. Alan Roos playing some beautiful things. The singer's name is Boots Castle, who was almost impossible to find anything out about, almost as obscure as Red Harper, until David Fletcher, the great researcher and blogger, got on it, and man, he found out everything about who Boots Castle was. It wasn't the real name, and where they were born, where they died, and all that kind of stuff. And maybe David will also look into Red Harper if he hasn't already. Boots Castle is more fun to look into because I think she actually sang better. But good old Boots gets one more chance here. Good old Red, excuse me. And this is the last track from the session, Sing Baby Sing.
Troubles you will sing, baby, sing. Do like the birdies do, come on and sing, baby, sing. When cold winter comes and they are all out of crumbs, we'll poor little birdies, they ain't eatin', but listen how the tweet, tweetin', whoa, baby, don't you know? A song a day keeps me no Mr. Gloom away. 'Cause hard luck don't like music with that Teddy Wilson swing. So swing it while you sing it, baby, sing.
Some more of that Cozy Cole style drumming on the out chords there, with kind of random accents. With it sounded like sticks to me. I think Gene must have switched from brushes to sticks sometime during that performance. I love that introduction. Although Teddy wasn't playing very busy with his right hand, he was playing Earl Hines with his left hand with the walking tenths, making it very interesting under that kind of single note pattern in the right hand. It sounded to me like Harry Goodman was moving back and forth between 2-beat and 4-beat throughout, winding up in 4 at the end, which is the right way to do that. Go out with a big sound. Alan Roos was up in the mix. That was nice to hear him. The solos were, the tenor sax solo was the standout to me, and I kept thinking, listening to that vocal, this is the kind of thing Fats Waller would do and really lampoon it and just practically murder it. And it's not a bad song, but it would certainly loan itself to that kind of treatment. This was recorded about the same time by Bob Howard, who was a Fats Waller imitator as far as, well, he wanted to be a Fats Waller imitator. He certainly wasn't of that class on piano, but he had a really nice accompanying band with Marty Marsala on trumpet and Dave Barber on guitar, Stan King, the wonderful older style dance band and hot jazz drummer, and Zinke Cohn playing kind of updated style by 1936, not as goofy as he played in Chicago in the late 20s. He was a lot more Teddy Wilson-ish and Fats Waller-ish by 1936. But there's some interesting things going on this side, and I think mainly for the rhythm section and with Teddy.
Well, now's the time in the session when I praise Alan Roos's timekeeping abilities, and I think this is a good side to do that because we can hear him so clearly. He seemed to have backed off a little bit in terms of the drive from the last side, but he's, because of where he is in proximity to the mic and how things have ended up, we get a really good sense of his beat. And we can even hear some hints of the voicings of his chords. It's a great little sneak peek into his whole thing, if you will. I've said this before. It's not exactly where I actually would prefer to hear a little bit more bass, maybe in a perfect fidelity type situation, to hear how the two are working together. But it's certainly a treat to hear Alan and hear him really underpinning the entire recording in terms of the rhythm feel, along with Teddy. I mean, Teddy, of course, we've talked about, he's playing a little more piano here and really responsible for a lot of the rhythm feel of all these sides. Beyond that, I'm with you, Hal. I mean, my favorite solo, I really enjoyed Vito Musso's solo on this. It just it's all those qualities you were extolling earlier, Loren. They seem to be present, at least in my mind, on this particular solo. And it's nice to rehear Vito Musso in a different context. Going back to some of his earliest recordings here, and placing him next to Chu Berry and players like this that were his contemporaries at this time, and kind of hearing him through a slightly different filter and appreciating him more today than I did, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, what have you. And I'll say it, it's good to hear. It's good to hear. It's good to hear Lionel Hampton. I mean, he finally, I feel like finally at this last side, he starts doing some of the things that he be known for over the next few years. A little bit more of his extrovert playing comes during this last side, even though overall it kind of feels like a let's just get this session done kind of a side. But a lot of good stuff as well.
Yeah. No, I mean, Hampton, really, I don't think it's ever really gotten his due in terms of the advanced improviser that he was in the 1930s and 40s. Okay, I'll say it. Gene Krupa, Lionel Hampton, and Teddy Wilson, I think, played their very best in the Benny Goodman band. And in later years, they did other things which were wonderful and great. And it's just a matter of your taste, what one person likes. I happen to prefer, I think Benny was a governor on Gene and Lionel in terms of excess sometimes, and a spark plug to Teddy in a certain kind of way as to when Teddy Wilson was left to his own devices. These are such great musicians that we're talking about here, and I'll take anything by them at any moment. But nonetheless, yeah. But what's fascinating about Teddy and Lionel there was their very offhand way of, in the midst of Vito Musso in the middle, of kind of just like offhandedly playing incredibly virtuosic things, just so cleanly and perfectly. And Lionel comes in almost as if, well, the way I hear it is that he's just showing what he can do in terms of cleanliness and technique and just sheer virtuosity. I mean, the way he just spells the chords out, which is a big part of his style, is kind of like a spelling out chord style. Just amazing. It's absolutely astonishing. But anyway, we've come to the end of this session. It's a brief one, but I think a fascinating one. And I want to thank Nick and Hal. I'm yours truly, Loren. And we'll be back with some more big band music from Goodman in our next episode as the band goes east to New York. And they're just at the cusp of the Paramount Theater and Harry James and all that kind of stuff. They've got a few months left. And for some, this may be the peak.